Welcome back to the Mental Health Toolbox. In this episode, we are talking about why mindfulness matters with my longtime friend and colleague, licensed clinical social worker, crisis responder, Christine Velasquez. So let's go. Hi, if you're just meeting me for the first time, my name is Patrick Martin, a licensed clinical social worker on a mission to raise mental health awareness and help you improve your thoughts, emotions, and behavior so you can do more than just cope, but thrive and create a quality life that you love. Let's go. Welcome, Christine, to the Mental Health Toolbox podcast. I'm so glad you have made time to join us today. Could you let the listeners know a little bit about what it is that you do?
All right. Yeah. So again, my name's Christine Velasquez. I'm a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You and I met working as therapists at Arcadia Mental Health.
Way back.
way back. So yeah, I've been practicing for over 10 years, arguably you could even say 15 years if you count all the work that I did as an academic counselor, or oh my gosh, 30 some years if you count all the work I did as a with my family. Right? Yeah. So I'm a therapist. I would say, after reviewing your questions, like what I would maybe be best known for as a therapist, I think, well, you saw me. I really took off with the mindfulness stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's your strength.
Yeah, I love it. It was such a life changer. I think a lot of times we get into this field because something within us needs some sort of healing or structure and things like that, right? Trying to understand ourselves and through understanding others. I think we mirror all the time, even if you're not in the mental health field. But yeah, no, mindfulness and CBT were super eye-opening. And then I also do a lot of work as a crisis responder. So I really love my work there. And if you know me really, really well, I think you even saw me when I was a little heavier in 2011, but a lot of the things that I've learned as a therapist helped me, kind of heal. And so ultimately I myself have lost over 100 pounds and have worked with clients and relate with clients at that level, because there's absolutely a very strong connection between our minds and our bodies, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those things, the weight loss, mindfulness, CBT, crisis work.
Yeah, fantastic. And telehealth, right?
And telehealth, right? I do now, especially now, right?
And you had a little private practice going for a minute. Yeah.
I got a little private practice going. I still work as a crisis responder. I'm still with the Department of Mental Health, mostly doing reports and stuff like that now and some assessments. But yeah, definitely got my little private practice if people are interested.
Yeah, very cool. I'll be sure to add your contact info at the end in the show notes for anyone who would like to learn more about you.
Cool.
I'm really curious about your mindfulness. When did you first dive into mindfulness work, and how have you incorporated that into what you do now?
Yeah, I think mindfulness was kind of that term was definitely floating around for a while. I remember as an undergrad at UC Berkeley attending classes with monks and going to the Buddhist temple on Sundays because they had great food.
Yeah. Right.
So, I kind of heard a little bit about meditation and things like that and the benefits of just the benefits of being present. And again, getting introduced to this idea that my thoughts or affecting my worldview or affecting my feelings or affecting my behavior, and that they didn't have to. So changing my relationship or becoming more aware of the difference between a thought and the present, things like that. But I think my mindfulness practice definitely got stronger and took off as through the evidence-based practices that we were being introduced to, as new clinicians. The CBT had a little bit of mindfulness, dialectical behavior. Therapy definitely had a lot of mindfulness.
Sure.
So I think that really helped kind of strengthen and recognize the benefits of mindfulness as I saw it within my clients. And, even though I was working as a therapist, I was also struggling with stuff myself, and trying to figure out how to manage the stress that I was feeling at work and the things that were happening at home. So I found myself doing extra reading, just really trying to figure out, okay, maybe I'm not as, I'm not struggling in the same way as these clients that we were seeing at the, in the nonprofit sector, but as a quote unquote higher functioning person, I was still struggling. So what would mindfulness look like for someone like me? So I discovered mindful based stress reduction through UCLA. And then I also, a book that really, really helped me, and I kid you not, I read over 4 times, was Mindfulness, an 8-week plan, finding peace in a frantic world. It's like a really long title.
That's fantastic. If you send that to me, I'll put it in the show notes for those who are interested.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. I even ended up reaching out to the author, super kind. I didn't realize how famous he was. Apparently he's like sold millions of books. And I literally just Googled him, sent him an email. Hey, can I run a group on your book? And he's like, totally. Like, didn't even, I was like, oh my God, what,
always good to get written permission, right?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. There was a part of it like, no, I need to check in on that. So I ended up running a few mindfulness books. So, I definitely learn a lot from teaching. So that strengthened it a lot. And, and it's still always evolving. My mindfulness practice is always evolving, getting stronger and things like that. So it's never ending.
Yeah. I have very fond memories of running DBT groups with you. And I was always impressed, even seeking safety groups, about how you would lead the mindfulness exercises and how powerful that was for clients.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate
I've always admired how comfortable you are with just slowing down. I always gravitate toward the tangible. I'm like, okay, what are we going to do about this? That's where my weak area is slowing down and just, being with the silence and the breathing. I have to work at that as a therapist because while I believe in deep breathing, completely slowing down it takes a lot of intention.
A lot of intention and attention. And I think the breathing, like giving yourself permission to just even in the middle of a conversation, be like, it's okay. Getting comfortable with the silence. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really, even the body movements, right? The gestures and all of that. Yeah, there's just so much there. And there is a lot of nonverbal work, I think, through mindfulness. And maybe what you were sensing was me learning to work with my body and model a lot of that for my clients.
Oh, definitely works. I'm curious, how has that shown up in your crisis work, your crisis response work, the mindfulness? Do you ever incorporate that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you're in crisis, a lot of times you'll find that, you're feeding off of each other's anxiety, right? Just because we're therapists doesn't mean that we don't get offended or don't get scared.
Amen to that.
Right? So, sometimes we'll have clients who are absolutely in crisis and maybe they're angry or they're really anxious and they're talking really fast and it's late at night. And as a responder, you're just like, I just need to get you to the hospital. I need to get out of here. Right.
Right.
But what I found is the less you push, the more easily we flow. Right. So I give myself permission to just kind of let them vent. And I find myself breathing in front of them, and you may not realize, but they don't realize it. But I think that they'll start breathing a little better as they
mirror neurons, right?
Yeah, exactly. The mirroring neurons, right? And my voice, my tone, that kind of thing. When I catch, say, because a lot they send us out as in twos. When I catch my partner maybe badgering them a little too much with too many questions, and I notice that the client's getting a little anxious or doesn't even know how to respond, and I'll a lot of times kind of maybe step in and just kind of can I ask a couple questions, or can we just stop for a little bit? Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you just breathe a little bit? And someone will, breathe. I'm like, yeah, this is a lot. We're talking about a lot, just even labeling what's happening.
Oh, sure. I think people who aren't in the industry or haven't done a lot of crisis work or placed consumers on holds, for psychiatric hospitalizations, it's easy to think that it's just a clean A, B, C kind of thing. Like, oh, you make the call, the ambulance shows up, and it's done. But oftentimes hours pass before you can arrange an ambulance in a hospital bed. And so when you're talking crisis response, it's not like, okay, this is a 10-minute job. Sometimes you're actually most of the time, sitting with the client or consumer to make sure they're in a safe state of mind and
Right.
calm
And managing
until the
that
ambulance
roller
arrives.
coaster of emotions.
Right.
Yeah. Because you could calm them at one point and then they might have a thought or a family might say
Mm-hmm.
member might say something and then boom, or we're back in crisis again.
Right.
One
Yeah.
second they're like, yeah, okay, I'll go to the hospital. And then, or they're like ambivalent. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a lot. And you have to kind of learn to just kind of flow with it and just ultimately trust that no crisis lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this work long enough. I've seen enough of life to know it literally cannot last forever.
Right. It has an ebb and a flow to it.
Yeah, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And to trust in that, even when when it feels like it's going on forever, I think helps kind of
Right.
put things in perspective and calm us down a little bit.
So a large part of crisis work is creating space for the person to cope effectively without engaging in any kind of risk behavior,
Right.
or anyone to themselves or anyone else around them. And you're just creating a safe bubble for them until they get the help they need.
Yeah. Ideally. Yeah. And then the intervention part, also kind of educating the family, modeling this for the family, also helping family members recognize that they might need some support.
Mm-hmm.
It's a system, it's a family system. So we're all
Absolutely.
affected. Yeah.
So you have to oftentimes educate family who maybe are contributing to the problem as well, or maybe they don't know how to help their loved one.
Yeah, consciously or unconsciously, they could be contributing to the problem, or they might feel so helpless themselves, they don't know where to start and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of normalizing some of what they're going through and helping them recognize that they're not alone.
Or
You're not
compassion fatigue,
alone.
right? It's a
Oh
huge
gosh, yeah.
thing, you know?
Yeah, totally. A lot of that. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard having a sick family member.
So I know it's hard work,
Mm-hmm.
crisis work. It's round the clock. I mean, it can be 2 a.m. and you get a call, right? So
Yeah.
how do you manage burnout?
How do I manage burnout? I mean, my self-care, I've gotten really good at it. I'll be honest. I kind of feel like I spoil myself a bit now. Um, I have a routine in the morning and a routine in the evening. Like I try to keep to that as best as I can. I wake up in the morning and I get all the negative thoughts like everybody else. I don't want to go to work. Like I don't necessarily wake up feeling like, yeah, life is great.
Right.
As best I can, I do my yoga in the morning. I fix my bed. I make sure that things around me in my home environment are feeling as structured as possible so that I can deal with the chaos of what my work might have to offer, you know? So that helps. Working out helps me a lot. Because I have a tendency to have a lot of nervous energy. I think that's probably a huge reason why mindfulness was so appealing, because it helped me figure out how to direct that nervous energy in healthier ways instead of eating. That used to be my self-care, was like eating.
Right.
I also found myself avoiding and becoming burned out by just distracting from myself. So always looking to help or fix other people because I didn't want to think about my issues. So now I'm a lot better about carving out some alone time, because I need that alone time, whether that alone time entails crying or working out or reading a book. I really do my best to tell my family, hey, like right now I'm really busy. Because codependency was absolutely one of my issues that I had to kind of overcome. So giving myself permission to rest, because even soldiers have to rest.
I love that analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah, because even soldiers have to rest, and it's a blessing to empower the people around you to recognize that they can take care of themselves too, that you don't have to take care of everything for them. Don't do for others what they can do for themselves.
Right.
Yeah,
AKA don't enable them, right? Or
yeah, you don't want to enable them.
don't shortchange them by making the assumption or teaching them that they can't do for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Because unconsciously, I think sometimes it feels good. We may complain about always having to do everything, right? Quote unquote, do everything. Um, but it's a bit of an ego boost too, to feel needed and think that you're the only one that can do it all, right? Like there was a particular study done at nursing homes where they gave all the residents a plant to take care of. I don't know. Have you ever heard of this study? They all got
Sounds familiar, but
yeah, they all got plants to take care of, and then they separated them into two groups. One group was told that the nursing staff would water their plant, not to worry about it, and then the other group was told that they were responsible for the plant, and they had, if they wanted to make sure that their plant lived, they had to make sure to water it, right? And these are people who are disabled and maybe have struggle a little bit, but were capable enough of watering a plant. They found that those who had to water the plants had better improved mental health, ones who were just helped all the time.
Well, that makes absolute sense when you think about purpose.
Yeah.
And I think, when we think about emotional support animals, it's not just about having the unconditional love, which is nice and something to pet. Animals are a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Responsibility, right? I have a lot of clients who talk about, having to change the litter box, feed their cat, take care of something outside of themselves that, a cat can't change its own litter box.
Yeah.
To have something or someone depending on you that you can, where you can rise to the occasion is very, very powerful, very empowering.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's I think self-care, or just, self-care is a window, right? You don't want to be too stressed and burn out, right? But you don't want life to be too easy either, because there's suffering on both sides of that spectrum. You want to have just enough. And I can't sit here and tell a person what that looks like for them. And that's why I really appreciate the mindfulness approach, is that because it looks at the person, the individual. You have to look at yourself and your situation to really, life is nuanced, and it's a constant ebb and flow, different forces. And so there is no blanketed, like, this is how we do it. It's just like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. No single prescription for how to do life. People have to find their own meaning.
Yeah. And the body is a really good, when we're not sure if we're doing it right. What I am learning more now, and I'm trying to maybe expand upon in my own practices, listening to my body. My body will usually tell me, the more I pay attention, when something is becoming too much, because I one of the things I do for me is, cleaning helps me feel better. Like, it just does. But I also recognize that there comes a point where like, I'm so obsessed with cleaning, it's making me grouchy because it doesn't look a certain way, or I'm grouchy because I just got out of, a really long shift and my back hurts. But and so recognizing, like, yeah, cleaning might feel like you're getting a sense of mastery, but if your back is hurting and you're still washing those dishes and you just did like 12 hours of work, maybe this is an example of where cleaning dishes isn't exactly a good self-care exercise.
I love that, right? Because it's easy to just kind of feel like, well, we have to check that box.
Yeah.
And we create that agenda for ourselves, or that expectation, but then we also have the power to choose, what's advantageous for us versus what we just want to, what we feel like we have to get done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Choice. I was talking to a client the other day, and they said an interesting thing I hadn't heard before. They said, someone asked them what the meaning of life was. And they said, to find meaning. The meaning of life is to find meaning. If you think about it, that's really genius.
Yeah.
Because it is. Everyone's journey is to find purpose, their own purpose. In
That's
life.
funny that you touched on that, because I was actually reflecting on that the other evening, and I'm like, it is, the meaning of life is to find meaning, live it, to me also. And then I thought, sometimes, so I wanted to add, and also make meaning, like sometimes you could approach it from a place of like, let me try all these other things until I find it. But there's also something empowering to, like, I'm going to make
Right.
the meaning in my life,
Yeah.
whether that entails making a family. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just as beautiful and important as, finding enlightenment, in my opinion,
Oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
because there's different enlightenment comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And yeah, there's not just one aha enlightening experience. I think life is full of enlightening aha moments.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it or you can find it, whatever works.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever.
So, I mean, you've done a lot. You've done county work, you've done crisis work, you've done, you know, field work, you've have a private practice. Where do you see your career taking you next? Like, what would you really like to sink your teeth into now that you've got a
So
good, decade plus
yeah,
under your belt?
yeah. So recently I finished this book called The Body Keeps the Score. Have you heard of that? With
You were
Bassel?
telling me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, Bassel Vanderkolk. I think I'm pronouncing that. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What a great book. Oh my gosh. I think it was written in 2014, and he just does such a good job of pointing out maybe some of the not so great aspects of the DSM,
Mm-hmm.
manual or mental health dictionary, and maybe the lack of recognition with regards to how trauma affects us,
Mm-hmm.
and how we have all these different diagnoses to describe behavior that he feels in a lot of ways were survival mechanisms that developed in response to trauma.
Mm.
Right. So a person might be seem like an oppositional defiant type person, but maybe they needed to be that to protect themselves in an environment where they were being attacked or hurt,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, what I took from that book was the power of EMDR, the eye
Mm-hmm.
movement, sensitization,
Desensitization. Yeah.
and reprocessing, whatever. Not whatever, but yeah, EMDR. And so I really want to get trained in that now. I think it's so super, super fascinating. And it sounds like it's good at getting to the root of a trauma,
Mm-hmm.
getting to the physical sensations people feel with
Mm-hmm.
trauma. Because I don't know if you've experienced this, but, a lot of times, a lot of times our clients, even myself, might have a really good insight like, oh, yeah, I do that. I'm acting like that because I learned this from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something I picked up from my childhood, and like, oh man, I'm acting like him and I'm being self-destructive. And so that's a great insight, but it doesn't stop you from doing it
Doing
again.
it right.
Like I still kept stuffing my face. I still kept, getting into not healthy relationships, and so
Mm-hmm.
you can have that awareness, but you don't always know how to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And so mindfulness, helped me recognize like there were physical, like sensations that were coming with these decisions, these impulsive decisions. And so it taught me to slow down so that I was making better decisions. And then eventually just feeling better and being arguably like just a very different person from who I was in my 20s, But EMDR, what I'm getting from it is that it does a lot of what mindfulness does, but it seems like it does it faster. Like it gets you to really make those connections, become aware of these physical sensations, and then create a sort of healthy detachment, right? So you can have that sensation and you don't have to react with that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems, and you don't have to even understand it or label it, right? Because sometimes it is important to talk about it. So I'm not taking away from that. But with EMDR, my understanding is you can reprocess these traumas, recognize them, make different connections, and become aware of different like physical sensations, and not have to constantly repeat those behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like a really cool tool to have. So I really, because I do enjoy working with trauma, and I think it's very much needed. I think I question who doesn't have trauma anymore because of COVID,
Right.
it's there's a lot of trauma and anxiety floating around right now, so it just seems like a really cool tool that I could benefit from myself, and I would love to share with others. So that's kind of where I'm going.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
definitely keep me posted on your journey there, because I'm not certified in EMDR, but I know, from what I hear, it's a fantastic treatment. And so I
Yeah.
know it's not the only treatment for trauma and PTSD, but it's certainly one of the more, traditional, robust treatments.
Yeah, it seems like it. So, I mean, he talked really highly of it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
excellent.
yeah. So I'm excited to
Well,
get into that.
we've talked a lot about you being a therapist, but I'm
Mm.
very curious, was there a particular turning point in your life that helped you move you in that direction of becoming a therapist, or did you always kind of know this is what I want to do with my life?
No, I definitely didn't know. I didn't even know what therapy was, right? Like
Good,
no
I'm
one in
not
my
alone.
family went to therapy, like
Like I stumbled into it.
therapy. Yeah, it was like that thing you saw on TV that rich people did,
Uh-huh.
So I never thought, oh yeah, I want to be a therapist. I think, but I was lucky in that it kind of my niche with I think it started with just working with at-risk youth, because I was technically an at-risk youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Immigrant parents, moved a lot, East LA, LAUSD, so I was an at-risk youth who got reached out to, and, was able to go to college. So I was like fortunate enough to like go to college. School, if anything, was kind of an escape for me. So that really helped. So when I got to Berkeley, part of your financial aid packet or requirement is to get a job, a work study job, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
started my work with these at-risk youth. And so I think that then kind of dominoed into me work. When I graduated, I ended up finding a job with what they call a transitional living facility.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know what that was. All I knew is they were looking for basically an academic counselor of some sort to help their kids. And so these kids were basically living in were part of this program, very affluent kids. No, like literally maybe like around my age, 17 to 24, failure to launch, right? Like they're at that age where like they're just like not doing what society expects of them, right? Go to college, that kind of thing. So I'm working at this program, and it was just really fascinating to be working with them, because even though they may have had a more privileged background, I absolutely recognized that they had very similar suffering, just as deep, just as significant as the at-risk youth, right? A lot of them, I think, had maybe absent parents,
Mm-hmm.
who just kind of threw money at the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was at the core of a lot of these kids' issues. But, unfortunately, a lot of them, as a result, developed addiction, mental illness, had trauma histories and things like that. So I was there as the director of educational services. So it started off with me, I just graduated Berkeley. I'm just trying to troubleshoot these kids were coming from all over the country. So some of them needed to finish their bachelor's remotely. Some of them needed to finish their high school diplomas. Some didn't know what the heck they wanted. So I was just trying to get them into like community college or some sort of vocational thing. But I got really close to the therapist, the L.C.S.W, and the psychiatrists who were running this program.
Mm.
So they mentored me essentially. And so like a BA in sociology doesn't get you very much.
Right. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that.
I majored in sociology in my undergrad, and I had a lot of colleagues who had like, I'm off to work. I'm like, are you sure?
Are you sure?
Sure about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, my work experience definitely saved my butt, because I love sociology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I didn't know what I wanted to do. In a lot of ways, I do think that it's important to still make sure you're doing things that interest you, and trust that, at least I did. I trusted that some way, somehow, it was going to turn into a job, right? Fortunately for me, it did. It was very similar, because I think, as an academic counselor, director of education, whatever, I was still doing some level of social work, some level of counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was watching this therapist and the psychiatrist, working with these kids, and they'd come out of their office and they just seemed like all this weight had been lifted. I was like, I want to do that.
Right? It's powerful, huh? It's like, wait.
Yeah. And they were just,
what kind of voodoo's going on in there?
yeah, exactly. And it wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like hunky-dory and, but it was still just like super fascinating. And so they really encouraged me to either get a doctorate or your master's. I wasn't, again, still ambivalent, not really sure what I wanted to do. Also not sure if I wanted to spend all that money on a doctorate. It seemed like getting my master's in social work was like a good in between. There was a lot of options, within social work. So in 2009, I went to graduate school at USC, and that's where I got my MSW. And what I liked about their program was you didn't have to know what specialty or what population you wanted to work with. Like they would let you figure that out as you did your internships and attended the program. Whereas the MSW program in Berkeley expected you to already know, like, do you want to do geriatric social work? Do you want to do mental health? So that's why I chose USC. Even though the loans are kind of but hopefully we'll get forgiven soon with the public service loan forgiveness program. But yeah, so my first job out of Berkeley, and to getting my MSW, that was definitely, one of the turning points or a major contributing factor to my career. Yeah.
I think a lot of life works that way. And certainly the case for me, where you're going to, you're doing something, productive, where you're being of service, but then you witness kind of a possibility that wasn't even on your radar, maybe.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you were exposed to an option that you didn't even know was on the table.
Exactly.
And in the work that you were doing, it was kind of a low-hanging fruit. You're like, oh, I could see myself doing that, but only because of the position you were already in, right? Because you were in service, you were serving people, and then you tapped into that passion.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I want to do more of this. What's the next thing?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
So it's hard to know what to do. And again, it kind of related back to mindfulness. Like mindfulness doesn't tell you what to do. Mindfulness just shows you and helps you recognize what's feeling good in the moment, what feels right in the moment, and gives you maybe some more skillful ways to kind of follow that path more consistently. And just trust that if you stay on that path, something will open up. It's such a waste of energy to worry about and, rehearse all these things in your mind when ultimately you don't even know what's going to be, what's going to unfold or what might present itself in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was James Clear in his book Atomic Habits who said you can't control outcomes. Stop focusing on outcomes. You can only control your actions.
I like that.
Right. And mindfulness is not about waiting for an epiphany, right? It's more about getting in touch with how you're feeling about the, where your life is at. And if you're not happy with it, then you move in a different direction. But it is rather proactive.
Yeah. So learning to be present. Acceptance, right? Acceptance doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean liking it. You can even be mindfully present and legitimately be in a really crappy situation in that moment, right? But if we can become more mindful of everything, like, oh man, this person's yelling at me and I'm going to crack my back, or I'm going to stretch my neck and I'm going to take a breath. It at minimum gives you, at least for me, I've found, and for a lot of my clients, it's given me some space. Right? It helped me recognize the silence that is in the room, the space that does exist, the peace, the pain that isn't there. I'm able to recognize all these other pieces,
Yes. I try and use mindfulness in the dentist chair.
Yeah.
Especially that needle's coming in the middle, like, okay, deep breath. Okay, what's not hurting right now? My toes. My toes are good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to to control where your attention goes. Almost.
Yes, yes, exactly. My point.
You put on in the morning or something.
Yeah. So it's the idea that you don't need to push away or chase away thoughts, but you can attend to the thoughts that you want.
Yes.
Right. You don't have to hold on to a thought just because it happens to be the first one that floats by.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we've talked a lot about therapy, mindfulness, your work. What is something you're passionate about that has nothing maybe to do with therapy?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one.
I know, huh?
Like
Work, course,
everything.
that's all you think about is work.
Yeah, it penetrates everything.
It does,
Like,
doesn't it?
it feels like, the mind is the filter through which I see everything. So it's hard for me not to relate it to something not related. Because if it's not mental health, it's self-care or personal growth or so for me it's all interconnected. I mean, yeah, working out, yoga, that kind of stuff. I may not be consciously thinking mental health, but that's a huge like passion, interest of mine. I love hiking, community with nature. I feel like all of that is so important. Family, that kind of stuff. Cooking more now that
Oh,
because
nice.
of COVID.
Yeah, right. Now that
Gardening, yeah. Yeah, I'm not special. I don't feel like, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't have some crazy cool hobby. I don't want to bungee jump. I don't want to,
I mean, you're not learning Latin in the evenings.
I have a guitar back there. Like,
Okay.
I kind of hit that. Music and podcasts, music before COVID, I think that was pretty big for me too. I'd go to a concert probably every month. So I do kind of miss that a little bit. But I find other ways to kind of fulfill that need.
Well, definitely. It sounds like, I mean, that's all self-care. It's knowing where the boundaries are between just work and then enjoying life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So my hobbies change all the time too. There's always something. And I give myself permission for it to change. Like, yes. I've been trying to learn guitar for years, and sometimes some weeks I'm like really into it, and even if I don't know what I'm doing, I just like hearing the strings, and it's like mindless and just present. And other times I'm like really into cooking something, or really into finding a new hike or biking. So it always changes.
Would you say that's an important part of not just mindfulness, but happiness is being giving yourself permission to switch gears?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the things that really develops with a mindfulness practice is curiosity. If you can approach your state, your situation curiously, right? Like, so for example, I mean, just the other week I was thinking like, I'm kind of bored. I don't know what to do. Like, I have a little extra downtime, but I don't want to play guitar and I don't want to listen to a podcast. I'm not like, what do I want? Like, I don't even know what I want. And so, I'm pretty good about not getting online too much, but I found myself getting on Instagram and I saw a friend kayaking. I was like, I want to do that. So I got online, I was like, oh, I can like kayak at Castaic Lake. I could just like rent a kayak and just like do it. Like, I wouldn't have thought that if I wasn't like, gave myself permission to just recognize like I'm bored and I don't know what to do and nothing about like what I'm thinking is interesting to me. Like, so yeah, to kind of just explore.
I love that. So rather than force yourself to A, be redundant, or B, just be apathetic, you actually, the first thing that spiked your interest or inspired you, you just kind of latched onto it.
I was like, hey, this looks good. I should look into that.
It's fantastic. I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Don't give ourselves too much time to talk ourselves out of things.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. Don't talk yourself out of things. Try new things. I think humor is also really important. So sometimes when I feel like I get too heady, I tell my clients all the time, like, when you can't change the channel, like cognitively, literally, change the channel, like literally, physically, like put something on YouTube. My gosh, we have access to so many things nowadays. So I'll put a little Mitch Hedberg or just some comedian and just like listen to some nonsense. I'm not a reality show person, but I recently discovered a show called Mortgage or Marriage. I'm like,
Oh,
that's
nice.
interesting.
Can't afford both.
Marriage. You know, let's see what the other world, like the other
Funny.
part of the world is thinking right now, you know. My gosh, yeah. Houses are so much cheaper outside of California. That's
Right.
definitely something I took away from that show.
That's a whole episode, right?
Yeah, it's like a whole other episode.
The
But
Exodus of California.
oh my gosh, yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, what would you say is a take home, like what would be the biggest take home points to anyone listening to this? Like what would you have them, if there's just a few, nuggets you could pass along, what would those be?
I say breathe. And I know that sounds super generic, but try it. Just try it. Just give yourself permission to stop, take a breath, you know. They have that acronym STOP, right? Stop. S is for stop. T is for take a breath. O is for observe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then P is proceed, right? But how often do we like do one thing and then move on to another and move on to the other and never stop? Like just freaking stop, right? Because what's happening essentially a lot of times when we don't stop is like you're literally building up all this tension in your muscles and all kinds of parts. And we think we're saving time, but we're not. You end up hurting yourself. And it takes way more time to like recover from that migraine, or that upset stomach or whatever physical reaction your body has now developed because you didn't take the time to stop. Your body is now yelling at you to stop, right? It really makes a huge difference, in my opinion, to make an effort throughout your day between conversations to just take that microsecond, that micro minute to just stop, take a breath, maybe stretch your neck a little bit, just check in and see if there's any part in your body that maybe might have the ability to let go a little bit.
I love that. Oh yeah. I carry all my tension like in the neck, and I get cluster headaches, and that's great advice because I end up spending like 30 minutes with my head in a pillow trying to wait for my headache to pass because I didn't slow down, so that I could use that advice. I have a hard time slowing down, honestly.
It's just a few seconds. I used to get migraines all the time. I don't care if I look like an old lady. I don't care what I look like, period, nowadays. So I will get my heating pad and I'll like warm it up and I'll put it when I'm in the car, or like I'll get my heating pad when I'm like, I'm done with this progress now. We got to go.
Right?
Like, you just got to take those little micro motions. Like I remember, like one of the analogies I use with my clients is like, okay, imagine carrying a cup of water. Imagine that cup of water represents stress, right? The cup of water in and of itself doesn't weigh very much, right? It's pretty light. All right, now imagine carrying that cup of water, like with your arm, hanging out, and give it a minute, give it an hour, give it multiple hours. What do you think your arm's going to start feeling? It's going to be really, really painful. And then even once you're ready to relax, oh, now I can put it down. That cup of stress is even harder to put down because your arm's like stuck and it's so tense. You put it down and you're still feeling it. Like your body feels it. It doesn't just recover. Like it's easier to prevent than to try to, recover it later. So for me, breathing is a form of maintenance and kind of letting the steam out a little bit before you pop.
Absolutely.
Super, super important. And you can't leave home without it. That's a great thing about the breath. No matter where you are, it's there too.
It's in your arsenal, right?
Yeah.
Gotta pull it out.
Yeah. So a little neck cracking and a little breathing, I think, can help everybody.
Good. I love it. Great advice.
Thanks.
Great analogies. Can I be your client?
Yeah. Use them, man. I've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, a lot. Analogies are great. Like there's this, they're just a really good way of kind of sending messages. And that's why I also find this work so fascinating, is like, as long as imagination is infinite, the ability to heal and all of that is so infinite as well, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm a believer. I think you've made everyone listening a believer as well. So mindfulness. That book you said, that was The Body Keeps with the Score, was that?
Yeah, that Body Keeps a Score is one of them. And then there was, let me see if I can show it to you. This one. This is the one I read 4 times when I first, it's called Mindfulness. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Finding Peace in a Frantic World. Love it.
Yeah.
8-week plan. I can get down for 8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it took me 6 months the first time I read it. That's okay.
That's real.
That's real.
Like most things in life.
Yeah. But what I liked about the way he formatted is, because you can read all these self-help books, and they're super insightful, and you have all these, you have all these insights, but you don't always know how to turn them into action. Mm-hmm. This book does a good job of giving you really basic little exercises to grow your curiosity, to really cultivate that mindfulness, that presentness, like something he calls them habit releasers. Before COVID, like one of the exercises was go to a movie, but don't know what movie you're going to watch. Don't know what time it's going to start. Just go to the movies. And so when you don't know what's going to happen, it's a really good way of practicing being present.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite thing to do in undergrad because it was right by the movie theater. And whenever I had a break, I would just walk over to the theater and walk in, and whatever was playing, I would watch. It was great. It was like way of like grounding. Yeah,
the mindfulness practice. You were doing it instinctually. I think a lot of us do a lot of mindfulness instinctually. So it's not this thing that only monks or gurus know how to do. It's a human ability that we just have forgotten and need to learn to make stronger because we've been conditioned to get so distracted by all these things that are getting our attention nowadays.
Oh yeah, more and more. It seems.
More and more. Yeah. Social dilemma, man.
We can put our phones down. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can.
And notice how your body feels when you put it down.
Oh yeah.
After the initial addiction.
People are really put your phones down and take your watches off, right?
Yeah.
Got a tighter leash now with the smartwatches.
It's a relief when you allow yourself permission to let that go a little bit,
Right.
Oh, but what if people need me? What if people are waiting? Let them wait.
Yeah. Guy's not falling.
The world's gonna be okay. Eventually they're gonna just remember, oh yeah, Christine's not great about
that important.
They'll get used to it.
No one's probably thinking about me anyway. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Would it be okay if I invited you back down the road for an update?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, this is fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Good interviewer.
Absolutely. For anyone who wants to learn more about you, where can they go?
They could find my website. It's christinesgood.com. So Christine, CHRISTINE. S, because Christine's good.
I love that. You are good.
Thanks.
I will put that in the show notes for anyone listening, so they can find you more easily. And until next time, Christine, you take care and stay mindful, okay?
Thanks, Yar. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.